So we're going to go with Jim in Missouri. It's Jesus did not change the laws and rules of Christianity. It was the discovery of the New World by Europeans. I'm wondering if maybe you guys have something to talk about that, or if they can express what they're getting at a little bit more.
Yes. So, yeah. Hey guys. Hey,
Jim.
The reason I say that it was the discovery of the New World that changed the laws of Christianity was, if you actually read the Bible, nowhere does Jesus say, okay, these laws are changed, out with the old, in with the new. No, he said, I'm here to uphold every jot and tittle of the Bible. Yeah. All those Old Testament laws, they're still here. But when Christopher Columbus discovered...
But have you read Paul's writings?
Yes. And really, but you have to understand, Paul's writings, they were all written, 20 years after supposedly Jesus lived? How the hell did he know what he was saying?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Christians are getting this from the Bible, because Paul clearly teaches that the law was temporary until Jesus came. In fact, if you go to Galatians chapter 3, it says, now before faith came, we were imprisoned and guarded under the law of faith until it would be revealed. Therefore, until faith would be revealed. Therefore, the law was our disciplinarian until Christ came. And he repeats this elsewhere. And this coincides with Acts chapter 15, when they actually have a meeting. Paul meets up with the disciples in Acts chapter 15, and they discuss how Peter saw the sheet coming down with the clean and unclean animals. And God said that now, all of these things are clean for you. And then the Spirit descends upon the Gentiles, and they start speaking in tongues. And they discuss all of this in Acts chapter 15, and they decide that it must be true that the Gentiles don't actually have to follow the law of Moses. And it says in verse 19 in Acts chapter 15, therefore, I have reached the decision that we should not trouble those Gentiles who are turning to God, but we should write to them to abstain only from things polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, and from whatever has been strangled from blood. So that's the rules that they give to the Gentiles.
Well, I think a lot of that was also to try to mainstream it for Roman consumption, because let's be honest, when you take over a country, you don't get rid of everything that they have. You keep some things just so that they can, that they'll go along to get along. But getting back to what I was saying, when they discovered the New World, you have to understand, back then Christians were killing other religions and even in their own religion, because they couldn't quite agree on how the scriptures were written.
Of course.
I mean, look at John Calvin and Servetus. They disagreed.
John Calvin executed people over in Geneva.
Right, you're dead.
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden, the New World gets discovered, and all of a sudden everybody had another choice. Okay, we can stay here, practice a different religion, even if it's Christianity, it's a different form of Christianity, but the powers that be might come and kill us. Or we can Christianity, go to this New World, where they have to come find us, which they're not going to do, and, we can practice whatever we want. And then once they landed in the New World, they made another very startling discovery. There's a lot of land here. You just have to, get rid of the indigenous population.
Right, but what I'm saying is that Christianity, far before the settlers came to America, had already determined that they don't need to follow the laws written in Moses. Like, if you just read the writings of the early church, it's pretty clear that they're not following them and that they believe what the New Testament says about them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, but a lot of those were details. All of a sudden, again, now they're in this new world.
Hey, man, what the church fathers say is what they say. I mean, you talk to Christians, they're all about that.
Well, then they were discovering these colonies, and when people would come, they might say, some another ship of Lutherans, but then going to this one colony, I think, yeah, but they're Calvinists and they might kill us because we don't worship God exactly, precisely, 100% the same way that they do. So why the hell are we going to there? We can go to a different part of this world and then set up there. It could be miles away, and they could And all of a sudden there could be this letter that says, hey, having a wonderful time. Glad you're not here, asshole. You know, you have to come, if you want to kill us, you have to come find us. That's a long walk. This was before, you know, trains and planes and cars and stuff. And they're like, and the settlers that were in this colony, they might think, yeah, that ship may have had people we needed, such as, you know, farmers and blacksmiths and craftsmen and teachers and women, or sensitive men you could use as women, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I'm kind of, it seems like though that Justin's giving you these reasons and you're still like not addressing kind of those.
I don't think he heard what I said.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the New Testament is clearly like unified in this particular topic. Hebrews chapter 7, in fact, talks about how the priesthood of the Levites are replaced by the priesthood of Jesus through the order of Melchizedek. And it says, for when there is a change in priesthood, there is necessarily a change in the law as well. And the whole book of Hebrew goes into why the old law was insufficient. The old law wasn't good enough to actually accomplish the long-term goal that God was seeking. And therefore, it was replaced by a new law and a new priest through Jesus Christ. So the New Testament is thorough, once you get past Jesus, obviously, is thoroughly against the law. The problem we have is that Jesus wasn't. In Matthew chapter 7, he's clearly a Judaizer, and he clearly means what he says about people following the law. And elsewhere in Matthew and the other Gospels, he even talks to the rich young ruler and to elsewhere to say, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And he says, follow the law. So we've got this tension in the New Testament because they were writing apart from each other. They didn't know what each other were saying. Half of the New Testament had no idea what Jesus taught because they didn't live when he was alive. They're writing at a different time period than him. So they take positions that they like, that Jesus himself, if you believe in the historical Jesus, didn't hold himself. And that's how you know that this book is not from God, because even Jesus and the so-called, apostle to the Gentiles and the other authors in the New Testament claiming to hear from God can't agree with each other. So,
right, and that's what I'm saying. You know, many of the, you know, in ancient time, you know, in the medieval times, they were killing each other. You know, the Catholics were killing the Protestants were killing the Catholics, the Protestants were killing the Protestants because they couldn't quite agree on how he said it. You know, they couldn't.
But that's not necessarily why they were doing it.
Said this.
You know what I mean? Like a lot of it was
what they were telling the people.
Well, a lot of what happened during the Reformation was an issue of the Catholic Church saying you're either with us or you're against us. And right now you have to be with us because the Turks are coming. And if we don't have a unified front against the incursion by the Turks coming from the East, you know, the whole Western Empire is going to fall. And so anytime you had breakaways from the Holy Roman Empire at that time period, they took it very seriously. And when the Anabaptists in the middle of the 1500s started baptizing adults and teaching them to leave the Catholic Church, they took that very seriously because they saw that as the empire falling apart. But to your point, you know, the Christians, the Protestants some of them were executing heretics just the same way that the Catholics were. But I don't think any of this really gets to the point because none of this is actually about the law. And maybe I'm confused. I thought we were talking about how the law was practiced within Christianity as it relates to the coming of people to America. But I don't, the people who came to America, I don't find that they had a different belief about the law than anyone in Christianity that came before them.
Well, no. Here's what was going on. What they were is they were leaving the European nations because, again, they were being killed for not believing this exactly the same way. So they thought, you know, why are we staying here? We got we can leave. We can go to this other world. And then once they got here, they realized they had to get people to come here. So they were like, okay, we're not going to kill you because you believe different than we do, because we need you. We need to get people here to form a society. You know, it was that attraction. You know, how do we get people to come here?
Like, to me, it sounds like I understand like how you put those things like A to B to C. Like I get how you're doing that, but like I just, outside of like, you know, Jim's conjecture, I don't really know what worth it like would be, right? Because it just seems like it seems like Justin's giving you kind of direct stuff that's it's not really ambiguous. And then you're kind of like, well, but there could have been this thing. And it's kind of like shades of one of the callers we had earlier where, like with Mike, where it's just kind of like, sounds like you want to really work hard to add that to it, but I don't really see any reason to accept that. I mean, Justin, am I getting this wrong?
No, I don't think so. I'm not really sure he's addressing the point, and it's starting to become unclear what the end goal of this dialogue is for. Like, what's the?
Well, it's just.
So, like, when I was in my freshman history class, we had to write a lot of essays, and my teacher always said, formulate your conclusion, and then you can support your conclusion with paragraphs of support. So it sounds like you started with your paragraphs, but we don't actually know what your conclusion is. We have no idea what you're actually trying to say at the moment. Can you tell us what your conclusion is, and then give us the support for that conclusion?
Well, the conclusion is that, let's be honest. Christians aren't killing, each other or other religions because of differences. At least that's what they.
Hold on, Jim. Hold on, Jim. I gotta stop you. Justin's looking for the conclusion. So what you might be doing now is what I did on the meta-ethics thing a little while ago, where I went on like a tangent for a while and I had to come back. And it happens, and I completely get it. I do it all the time. But we want just a direct kind of conclusion so that he can kind of marinate on that and then get the reasons. Otherwise, you're giving Justin a lot of work to do right now in his head,
Well, it's basically.
So what's the conclusion?
Bible that we now. Well, now there are things, now in 2024, there are parts of the Bible that we basically ignore. And we say, hey, don't read that part. Because of, we're much more civilized now. And it is because we discovered America. And by the time we finally, settled from sea to shining sea, everybody thought to themselves, okay, we were supposed to do something, which was probably, create a faith-based theocracy. And they had forgotten because it took them almost 200 years to do. And they're like, oh, we forgot. What are we supposed to do again?
Because I just don't see that in history is what I'm saying. Like as early as we have, our earliest Christian texts all affirm that they believe what the New Testament position of the law was. In fact, in the Epistle of Barnabas, he literally says, "For he has revealed to us by all the prophets that he needs neither sacrifice nor burnt offerings nor oblations. He has therefore abolished these things, that the new law of our Lord Jesus Christ, which is without the yoke of necessity, might have a human oblation." So from the beginning of Christianity to modern times, the position of the law has been very clear, which is it is not for Christians, it was for the Jew.
But at the same time, a lot of the, Paul and after the Gospels, these were, and even the Gospels, they were written years, decades after all this supposedly happened. So they have no idea.
I'm aware. But I'm aware. I agree with you. But your hypothesis is about what the settlers did with the Bible when they came to America. It's not about whether or not the New Testament authors got it right. I don't think they did. I think they got it wrong. But the conversation right now is about why the settlers reinterpreted Christianity when they came to America. And I don't see that happening in history. All of Christian history that we have seems to be suggesting that they routinely understood that the law was done away with.
Well, they were changing things because, again, they had to get people to leave Europe and form the society here in America. Now, again, if you're saying, again, that's why they said, okay, we're going to separate church and state, because they realized we got to give you an incentive to come here.
But the Anabaptists created that. Have you read the 7 Confessions of the Anabaptists or the Schleitheim Confessions? this is a Christian thing. The Reformation invented the separation of church and state because they wanted the European government out of their religion. Stop telling me how to practice my religion. That happened way before people came to America.
Well, I also think a lot of it was also because, because again, some of it was not as blatant. The church still had a lot of power back then, even during the Reformation. Then all of a sudden, again, we find this new area where somebody could say, even if you were a different religion and you came to my colony, they could maybe try to fake it until they could get enough material to go west and, hide out, a situation of, I'm a different Christian than you are. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Jim, I'm going to have to.
He's got to die. You got to find me.
Jim, I'm going to have to cut it at this point just because I don't see you guys agreeing. If I'm from an outside viewer, I'm siding with Justin here. And that's not just because I'm co-hosting. He gave very specific things, and it just seemed like you were working really hard to have the hypothesis that you have work out. But I don't know. It seems like what you should do with some ideas, see, try to see how it's false potentially. And Justin's a great person to show you that. And so, I think that I don't know. I think the progress or the success here would be for you to just realize that this hypothesis right at the moment isn't really founded on anything compared to, alternative explanations like Justin has given. So, I mean, that's just my.
Well, agree to disagree.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. Appreciate it, Jim. We're gonna move on.